January 11th, 2026. This is a date that historians might look back on as the day the fuse was lit. While most of the world was asleep or distracted by the weekend news cycle, a report emerged from CNN that has sent shockwaves through the Pentagon, the State Department, and intelligence agencies across the globe. We are not talking about sanctions anymore. We are not talking about diplomatic warnings or harsh tweets. We are talking about kinetic military action. The report confirms that President Donald Trump is actively weighing options for a direct military intervention in Iran. The chessboard of the Middle East has been complicated for decades, but what is happening right now, at this very moment, is fundamentally different. There's a specific, terrifying variable in the equation this time, a piece of intelligence regarding Tehran's capabilities that has forced the White House to consider strikes that were previously unthinkable. This isn't just about regime change, it is about preventing a catastrophe that could reshape the entire 21st century. But why now? Why, after years of a Cold War, are we suddenly looking at the barrel of a hot war in January 2026? And more importantly, there's a specific underreported economic trigger that makes this war almost inevitable if one particular line is crossed. A trigger I will reveal later in this video that explains why the US might have no choice but to act. To understand the gravity of today's news, we have to look at the raw data coming out of Washington. The CNN report explicitly states that President Trump has been briefed by his top national security advisors on multiple military courses of action. This comes as the Islamic Republic of Iran is facing what analysts are calling its most severe internal crisis since the 1979 revolution. The streets of Tehran, Isfahan, and Mashhad are burning. Protests that began over economic stagnation and civil liberties have morphed into a full-blown insurrection. But here's the American angle. Usually, when a rival nation is imploding, the strategy is to stand back and watch. Napoleon famously said, "Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake." But the United States is doing the opposite. The Trump administration is looking to intervene. This raises the question of intent. Is this intervention designed to support the protesters, or is the chaos in Iran simply a smokescreen, a convenient window of opportunity for the US to take out strategic targets that it has wanted to destroy for 20 years? We have to look at the menu of options that have been placed on the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. According to sources familiar with the briefing, the options range from limited support to full-scale air campaigns. The first option is what the Pentagon calls the Decapitation Strategy. This involves precision strikes on the command and control centers of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. We saw a preview of this doctrine in 2020 with the strike on Qasem Soleimani. However, the plans being weighed today are on a completely different scale. We are talking about simultaneous strikes on dozens of IRGC facilities to sever the communication between the regime and its enforcers. From the US perspective, this neutralizes the threat of Iranian proxies in Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq without requiring a single American boot on the ground. The second option is the nuclear neutralization package. This is the scenario that keeps generals awake at night. Intelligence suggests that amidst the chaos of the protests, hardliners in Tehran might be accelerating their nuclear breakout time as a final insurance policy against regime change. If the regime feels it is about to fall, the logic goes, they might race to build a bomb to secure their survival. The US military option here would involve the use of massive ordnance penetrators, bunker-busting bombs designed specifically to collapse the subterranean facilities at Fordo and Natanz. But every action has a reaction, and this is where we need to analyze the cost. The United States is currently navigating a fragile economic recovery. Inflation has stabilized, but it hasn't disappeared. If President Trump authorizes strikes on Iran, we have to look at the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 20% of the world's total oil consumption passes through that narrow choke point. The moment the first US missile flies, Iran has threatened to mine the strait and swarm it with fast attack boats. Let's play out the simulation. If the strait is closed, even for a week, oil prices don't just go up, they double. We could be looking at $150 or $200 a barrel. For the average American consumer, this means gas prices skyrocketing overnight. For the global economy, it means an immediate recession. This is the paradox of the Trump strategy. His platform is built on America first and economic prosperity, yet a military intervention in Iran risks shattering that prosperity instantly. So why would he do it? Why take that risk? This brings us to the geopolitical vacuum. We must look at Russia and China. In 2026, the global alliances are rigid. Iran is a critical node in the axis that opposes Western hegemony. China relies on Iranian oil. Russia relies on Iranian drones and military technology. If the US intervenes, does Beijing send its navy? Does Moscow provide air defense systems? The assessment from the Pentagon, according to these leaks, is that China and Russia are currently over-leveraged. Their economies are straining and their military focus is elsewhere. The US assessment, and this is a gamble, is that if the US strikes hard and fast, Beijing will protest, they will condemn, but they will not shoot. They will not risk World War III for the Ayatollah. However, there's a human element on the ground that complicates the American narrative. The Iranian people are currently fighting for their freedom. There's a school of thought in Washington, particularly among the more hawkish neoconservative wing, that believes a US military strike would rally the population around the flag. Historically, when a country is attacked by a foreign power, internal divisions disappear and the people unite behind their government. If the US bombs Iran now, do we inadvertently save the very regime we are trying to topple? Do the protesters stop fighting the Basij forces and start fighting the American invaders? This is the psychological warfare aspect that the CIA is undoubtedly analyzing right now. But we have to go deeper into the why. Why is this report surfacing on January 11th, 2026? Leaks like this are rarely accidental. In Washington, a leak is a policy tool. By allowing CNN to report that options are being weighed, the Trump administration is engaging in psychological deterrence. They are signaling to the regime in Tehran, we are watching you. If you crush these protests with too much brutality, or if you make a move towards a nuclear weapon, we are ready to pull the trigger. It's a game of high-stakes poker. Let's discuss the secret reason I mentioned at the start of the video. The economic trigger that no one is talking about involves the global shift in energy dominance. By 2026, the United States has solidified its position as the world's leading energy exporter. But there's a glut in the market. American shale producers are pumping at record highs, but prices have been soft due to weak demand from Asia. A conflict in Iran, while disastrous for consumers, creates a strategic pivot. It knocks a major competitor, Iranian oil, offline permanently. It forces Europe and Asia to depend even more heavily on American LNG and crude. From a purely Machiavellian strategic perspective, neutralizing Iran secures American energy dominance for the next 50 years. It forces China to buy energy on American terms or face a shortage. This is the cold, hard calculus that might be driving the decision-making process in the Situation Room. It's not just about human rights, it's about controlling the tap of the global energy supply. Furthermore, we need to talk about Israel. The coordination between Washington and Jerusalem has never been tighter. For years, Israel has been warning that Iran is approaching the point of no return. With the US now weighing direct intervention, it implies that Israel might have provided intelligence that the point of no return has been reached. If the US doesn't act, Israel might act alone, and a unilateral Israeli strike is messy. It drags the US in anyway, but without US control over the timeline. By taking the lead, the Trump administration ensures that if a war happens, it happens on American terms, with American timing and American objectives. The logistical footprint is already shifting. If you look at open-source flight data and naval tracking over the last 48 hours, we are seeing unusual movement. Carrier strike groups are repositioning in the Arabian Sea. Heavy transport aircraft are moving supplies into bases in Qatar and Bahrain. These are not drills. This is the pre-positioning phase of a conflict. The gun is being loaded. The safety is being clicked off. The only thing missing is the order to fire. We also have to consider the domestic political angle. It's 2026. We are in the middle of a presidential term. A successful foreign policy win, the toppling of an adversarial regime, the neutralization of a nuclear threat cements a legacy. But a botched war, a forever war, destroys a presidency.
The ghosts of Iraq and Afghanistan hang heavy over this decision. The Pentagon is promising a surgical operation, a limited intervention. But anyone who studies history knows that wars rarely stay limited. You cannot control the chaos once the first bomb drops. So where does this leave us today? The CNN report is a warning flare. It tells us that the status quo in the Middle East is over. The containment strategy has failed. The US is now moving towards an active rollback strategy. For the global audience, this is a time of immense uncertainty. For the markets, Monday morning is going to be volatile. For the people of Iran, caught between a repressive regime and the potential of American airstrikes, the future has never been more dangerous. As we watch the situation develop over the coming hours and days, remember this: the decision to go to war is often made long before the public knows about it. The mobilizing of ships, the briefing of allies, the leaking of plans, these are the steps of a dance that leads to conflict. The US has weighed its options, the scale is tipping, and if the calculations regarding Chinese neutrality and the nuclear breakout time are correct, we might wake up tomorrow to a very different world. I want you to think about the implications of that energy dominance theory I explained.
Or is it the
if
final
the US
move
controls
in a game
the flow,
of energy
they
chess?
control the future.
The pieces are moving, the clock is ticking, and for the first time in years, the possibility of a direct state-on-state war involving a superpower is not just a theory, it is a breaking news headline.